if I'm a franchise owner, I don't have to be an expert in everything. I don't have to be a sales expert. I don't have to be a marketing expert. I don't have to be an education expert. Do I need to know about those things? Absolutely, right? But that's the beauty of franchising, is the support you're going to get from people that are experts or educated in that. And so for you, it's an opportunity to invest, to build your purpose, to build your passion, to continue through that.
So you have a passion for fitness and the desire to start your own business. But launching a massively successful fitness business is extremely complex. The systems, operations, hiring, firing, coaching, sales, and marketing are critical to success. Where do you even start? This show will give you the answers. Here is Bedros Keuilian and Bryce Henson, your hosts of the Fitness Franchise Podcast, a show dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs launch and grow successful gyms.
Welcome back, friends, to another incredible episode of the Fitness Franchise Podcast. And before we get to today's episode, I want to go ahead and remind you to like and subscribe on YouTube and write us an awesome review on iTunes. That way we can keep producing this content for free. Now, to introduce today's guest, who's a friend of mine, who's also a certified athletic trainer and strength and conditioning coach, who has his Bachelor's and Master's degree in athletic training and sports medicine. Now, he's also the director of education at StretchLab's franchise, which offers one-on-one assisted stretch to their members, and currently has nearly 400 locations sold domestically. Now, he's also been featured as an expert contributor in media outlets such as Men's Journal, Women's Health Magazine, US Triathlon Magazine, and Healthline, and many more. Austin Martinez, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Bryce.
Well, super excited to connect, and we have a lot in common, coming from California, the Midwest. So our audience would want to start out by hearing the backstory.
Absolutely, yeah. So, that starts kind of where I grew up, born and raised in California. I grew up in a small town kind of near the foothills in Glendora. Spent most of my life there, then kind of transitioned into the OC. Did my bachelor's degree at Chapman University in Orange County, had a great experience there. As you mentioned, I went through the athletic training program. And then after I finished that, I was looking to kind of continue my education. To be honest, wasn't necessarily sure what I wanted to do. And so at the time I looked to continue the education. I found a great university in Ohio University, great program. Super fortunate to meet my wife there, so it all worked out perfectly. And then as I finished up that program, came back and actually started off my career being able to work at my alma mater at Chapman. Started off in their athletic training program, had a great experience working with some of their teams there, football, worked with the volleyball team, the basketball team, really helping with injury prevention, evaluation, and rehabilitation. And then prior to that, I also got a really fantastic experience working in the Houston Astros baseball organization.
Oh, really?
And then pretty much what I kind of transitioned through there is ultimately kind of how I found StretchLab.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to unpack that. That's a lot there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I'm originally from the Midwest, and I came to California, and I feel like you're the opposite. You grew up in California and then did some time in the Midwest before, obviously, being back here.
Yeah.
And we were talking off camera, but I was thinking to myself, coming from the Midwest, when I first, arrived in Orange County, I was like, this place is amazing. Yeah. My question to you is, you go through Chapman, obviously you go through schooling. What made you decide to go to the, Ohio University?
Yeah, no, great question. When you look at athletic training programs, generally what you try to look for, what are called accredited programs. And there's kind of few and far between. You'll actually find that really no accredited programs exist for at least a master's degree, right, in California. So I started to look at what the opportunities were. There's some more programs throughout the country, started to visit them. And then when I visited Ohio, I really just fell in love with it. The town, the curriculum, the instructors. Someone that I grew really close with is actually a really prominent name within athletic training and sports medicine. And I actually, he became my mentor, and I got to work with him pretty closely. So it was a really great experience, kind of build my confidence in my education. But then I also got a great opportunity to work with the baseball team there.
Yeah.
Baseball is definitely one of my big passions.
And that's interesting because we were talking, it's a huge passion of yours, and then you got the opportunity to work for the Astros organization. So if you can kind of, story tell a little bit there, I'm dying to know.
Absolutely. So my mentor at the time was looking to kind of build, more internships for the program to continue to attract people, and he worked hard to kind of find this great and build this partnership with the Astros organization. I got the opportunity, it would have been, I think, in the summer, in between the transition between my first and second year as a two-year grad program. And I, kind of applied and had to go through this process, but I got the internship to work with some of their teams in the minor leagues. And so I got to work under the head athletic trainer there. It was actually up in Troy, New York, kind of in the Tri-City area. There's a whole team of organizations out there through some of the different programs. and I got to work pretty closely, honestly, with the essentially kind of the division that I was in was guys that were freshly drafted, which is huge, right? These are first rounders, second rounders, guys worth millions of dollars. So kind of nervous at one point because you're like, I'm touching $1 million arm, but also just a great opportunity to kind of build your confidence, especially when it comes to your skill set. So I was there for roughly about, I want to say 3 to 4 months. Got to work pretty closely in their sports medicine department, even with their strength and conditioning coach. Actually had a job opportunity after, but it just wasn't something that was lining up for me at the time. Just didn't feel like it was the path I needed to take. So I came back for that second year.
Interesting. So I want to kind of peel that and get your perspective because, coming from my perspective and also a lot of our audience who are interested in fitness and training and whatnot, kind of the dream is I want to go into like sports training, right?
Yeah.
And then, many of us realize like the niche is so small.
Yeah.
And there's certain just, skill sets you need to acquire versus training, your average Joe. Or, in this case, we call Mrs. Jones our standard client for the Fit Body Bootcamp franchise that we have. So can you talk a little bit about like the differences? And now, I don't want to fast forward to StretchLabs right off the bat, but you've had experience training athletes, but also too training, normal people. Kind of what are the differences, from your experience?
I think it has to do with, the accommodations that the bodies have, right? When you look at someone that's a professional athlete, they've done a lot of work to really build up their body, right? So you have to start them at a completely different level to really see any changes, right? And that's really what we're ultimately going for, whether it's for Mrs. Jones or, the $1 million athlete, is you're trying to make some sort of stimulus, some sort of change, right? And, you kind of think of the general thing of periodization or the SAID principle, right? Specific adaptations to impose demands. You have to have enough of a change, enough of a stimulus to see results. But if you do it too quickly on the other side, right, you might teeter out, you might injure them. But if you don't have enough of a stimulus, then they're not going to really see any change.
Right.
So definitely that, I would say, is the biggest difference in how you're looking at the program and to help people, whether that's from a performance aspect and then even from rehabilitation, right? I've worked with the general population when it comes to rehab. I've looked at, and then I've worked with professional athletes and the way the body recovers as well, right? Like an athlete's going to recover much quicker just because what they've done with their body over time. So just generally things you have to be cognizant with there to really be able to start off, right? If I were to take that professional athletes program and give that to Mrs. Jones, she's going to kind of have a big bug eye and she'll be like, what are you doing to me, right? And then vice versa, if I give that program to the athlete, he's like, this is really simple for me, and they're not going to see any changes.
Totally.
Yeah.
And probably more of a preference question than anything, but you kind of explain the differences. What's your passion specifically? Like what type of client do you like to train?
Yeah, no, I think my biggest thing is, to answer it really well, I think when I first started that internship, I thought for the longest time, like my passion was to work with professional teams, right?
And I think I'm sorry to interject there, but that's just so important because in my experience working with multiple coaches, like gym owners across the country and world, I feel like that's a common, entry point. They really have this passion. So continue to elaborate.
Yeah, and I think I try not to generalize because I think everyone's life is like so unique and you got to figure out what it's for you. But I realized over time, like having to do some deep diving, like a lot of why I wanted that was just, kind of conformity of like how people viewed that, right? It was more of like an external, like, oh, well, people that work with professional athletes are, they're smart and they're fantastic, right? And it's like, no, you have some pretty great people that don't do that as well, right? And there's also the lifestyle in general, right? That's a very demanding lifestyle and you kind of have to make decisions on, what your family life is and all of that stuff. But I ultimately made that change and, I ended up after working with Division I athletes, Division III. I've always found that I generally want to work with people, regardless if it's Mrs. Jones, your general population, or professional, that want to truly be there, right? And so when you look at it, for a good example, right, Division I athletes, they generally want to be there, right? They're high level, they're getting, scholarships. Even now they might get paid to play, right? And they have a vision that they're moving towards, and I want to attach to that vision for them, right? I want to help them grow. That's one of like my purposes or my passion. Even with the general population, right? If they're making a conscious effort to go into fitness or to recover from an injury, it's because they themselves want to make that change. So I want to help people that want to make a change, right? I don't get bought into people that are just there to go through the motions, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I want to transition now to a little bit about how we first connected. Well, your wife is actually how we first connected,
Yeah.
but more so, and we'll kind of story tell a little bit there. But your involvement in StretchLab, which you basically kind of story told too. So just to give our audience a little kind of background, while I'm a healthy and fit guy, I would say flexibility is like the weakest part of my fitness regimen.
All of us, man. All of us.
Yeah, it's embarrassing, but I've actually joined the Mission Viejo StretchLab to go once a week just to kind of work on that.
Oh,
so,
fantastic.
Yeah, so we were kind of connecting offline on that. But if you can kind of give our audience an overview if they haven't heard of StretchLab before, just a little bit about the company, and then curious, kind of more on your role in your day to day.
Yeah, no, I think StretchLab, right? It's a different concept in the fact of it's focused more on wellness. It's focused more. Well, actually, you look at any fitness, right? It's the concept of investing in your body, right? You look at traditional fitness, it's investing in your body. But this takes a little bit of a different approach, right? We all have to remember, and sometimes we forget that traditional working out, strength training, running, whatever it is you may be doing, right? You're breaking down your muscle tissues to build you back up, right? It's that phrase of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and that's great. But sometimes you need to add recovery into that, right? A big phrase I love is like your next workout is only as good as the recovery you did prior to that or after, right? Because you have to help invest into your body to build you back up to do that work.
Right.
And that's really the mindset we take with StretchLab. It's about taking the general population, taking the athlete, taking the fitness addict, whatever it may be, and it's helping them move and feel better, do the things that they truly want to do to move freely through assisted stretching. And that's through a membership once or twice a week or however they want to come. And so when they come in, they're going to get a fantastic stretch. They're going to work with a highly educated flexologist who's gone through extensive training, has certifications, a degree. And they're really going to program a stretch for you, right? And we really take the customized, tailored approach. We want to ask a lot of questions to know more about you because that delivers a better product, right? And that really kind of tailors it to what you want to do. And we have a flurry of different things that we focus on as well to get you where you want to go in your flexibility journey.
Yeah. Now for me, it's interesting. I joined, or at least kind of started going to StretchLab just because I had back pain, and actually it's all connected, right? So I think it's more the hamstrings and whatnot.
It's like that grade school song where it's like the hip bone connects to the knee bone, right?
And that's probably something that you live by, right?
Yeah.
And certainly we do as well in the fitness industry, but. For me, it was the lower back pain that really kind of, woke me up to this.
Yeah.
I'm curious in what you see, and I know you'll kind of talk a little bit more about your role, how it's evolved, from, coaching individual people down to master trainers and all that. But from the client perspective, and I think this is very valuable for our audience who are interested in fitness and potentially opening up gyms, et cetera, just to see kind of what's the typical client, experiencing from pain, or why are they, showing up at your doors?
Great question. I mean, I think, definitely when I joined, and then when you think of the concept, most people tend to attribute like, oh, the only people that go to StretchLab, like stretching's for athletes, right? And that's not the case at all, right? Stretching needs to be for everyone. And what you actually find if you go into our membership base is that it is your average people, your average Joes, your average Mrs. Jones, Janes, whatever that may be. Because we go through these general aches and pains, right? We don't have to work out to have aches and pains. It could just be sitting at the desk typing away, right? It could be getting that tightness in your wrist. It could be that poor posture moving forward where now you have that neck pain. It could be sitting all day, or it could be working out, right? And that's the beauty of it. And the way I've always, at least what brought me into StretchLab was, and this is kind of my own opinion of it, I really see it as like this hybrid concept, right? You look at traditional healthcare, where I kind of came from, you have insurance and you have hospitals and physical therapists. Fantastic model, but there's some holes there, right? I think insurance in general, like it's just a very murky area. And it's hard to get in, right? You have to have insurance to then see people, and there's only so many visits you can have, and it costs so much money, right? And there's not a lot of direct access. You have to go through a lot of hoops. And then you have, what we call preventative-based medicine, which I would definitely put fitness in.
Totally.
Right? And invest in your body. And I wouldn't necessarily put StretchLab in fitness. I would put it in this middle tier where it's not, it's a blend of fitness and traditional-based healthcare. It's like this hybrid model where, before StretchLab, if you had aches and pains, you'd be like, okay, well, where's the closest? I got to go to my general practitioner, and I got to go do this. And our goal is not to treat your injuries, but it's definitely to help you with the ailments that we all accrue over time to make it much more simpler and to have effective solutions for it.
So would you say, and it's interesting from a fitness perspective, I always say I'm in healthcare, but like the proactive aspect of healthcare versus reactive. And I feel like what you're saying is StretchLabs is a little bit of both.
Yeah, it can be, right? We definitely cater to the proactiveness. We love the proactive concept. And I think that's where we kind of mesh well with fitness. Fitness is all about proactive, right? But then there's also the reactive piece of, hey, I had to go to physical therapy, and then when they actually recover from that injury, they go to physical therapy, they finish it up. A lot of times we have practitioners, doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors saying, hey, you're rehabilitated from your injury, but you should really continue to work on your flexibility and your range of motion. That's going to be helpful for you as you go throughout life. And that's where they might get referred on the back end with us. So a lot of opportunity there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Now, shifting gears and really kind of talking to our audience who are interested, typically in opening gyms in the fitness industry, what would you say, the average, fitness professional probably should know about flexibility and that this approach, but maybe doesn't?
Yeah, I would say that there's a science to it. I think a lot of people get caught into thinking that stretching is hocus pocus or it doesn't attain the results, right? And you look at maybe even some old literature, sometimes it's murky as to where stretching is, but that's not necessarily the case. That's old wisdom or that's old teaching that was in the 70s or 80s, right? Science is constantly evolving. And you look at a lot of the new literature and what's going on, it's very much an effective modality. And it works very similar to how you see fitness and how you progress, right? Consistency is key, right? That's the most important thing. Not to say that doing, nothing is better than something, right? But you're gonna see longer progression if you're going more frequently versus, hey, I'm gonna go this Tuesday and then I'm gonna go next Thursday. That doesn't add up, right? The compound effect is super important. And so I would say just finding true courses, true educational material to dive into that, and that it's a huge advantage if you're a fitness professional. It kind of makes it all more inclusive, right?
Yeah.
And that's what your customers generally looking for is all inclusiveness, right? And so it can be a huge advantage.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. We've added a stretching component to our sessions here at Fit Body Bootcamp, and that's certainly like a great start and something that we execute really well and helps the client. But I think there is value because I'm a client of Fit Body Bootcamp in addition to being the CEO. But I do think there is a lot of value in having a set time consistently see where you're really just focusing on stretching. I think that's where the huge solution that you guys have to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's that, having that set time accountability, but additionally working with someone who's knowledgeable, right? And I would say Fit Body Bootcamp, that's the beauty of it, is you're working with a very knowledgeable instructor that's going to take you through these workouts and really make sure that you're moving through the movement safely and effectively and getting the right results, right? As opposed to trying to do that yourself, whereas you can miss out on a lot of those results. So that's the beauty of, one piece is working with that flexologist who has a lot of detail and depth in what they're doing for flexibility science and flexibility training. The accountability is huge, right? Because when you show up and you're not touching your toes or, you haven't got a little more flexible, that flexologist might joke with you and say, hey, you've been doing your homework, right? What's been going on outside of the studio? And that's what you invest in, right? You invest in those two things.
In the coaching, yeah.
Yeah.
That's crucial.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to transition a little bit more your role. I want to geek out a little bit about, Flexology, not like, high level, which is important, but especially for our audience, our fitness professionals, and they need to, part of the show is to educate, right?
Yeah.
So we'd love to kind of uncover the veil and kind of find out what you do on a day-to-day basis and really talk a little bit more of the mechanics.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure like you'd answer, it depends on the day. But
Touché.
When we look at it, I would say kind of the bigger things I overlook is definitely the instructor program. We put roughly 100 instructors a month through our training program. And one of my biggest values is that as we grow this franchise, as we grow, as we're able to reach and change more customers' lives, I really want to ensure that the quality of the product never dilutes. If anything, we're trying to make it better, right? We're trying to make it more challenging to go through, because that is the commitment we're making to a member. I always tend to, kind of talk about with my master instructors, the people that are training and grading. For me, an experience, you've experienced a stretch, I always think about like, would I want this person to stretch my mom? Right? It's not scientific at all,
right? But
it's a really great thought process to have, right? Of like, is this person where I need them to be? And that makes a big difference. So a lot of that, right? The operations of that, but additionally a lot of like the product and the member experience, the stretch itself, the customization, how we progress, which is super important because a member is not just buying one stretch. They're buying an investment in continued progress, right? And there's a lot of variables you have to play with that, like just like fitness, right? And if you just do the same thing, you're going to get the same thing, right? And so you have to be able to change that over time. There's a science to it, and so that's itself is super important from an education perspective. We do a lot of continued education, right? So if you went to training through our program maybe 2 or 3 years ago, it's really important that you continue to get more information. I like to think of it like a software update.
Totally.
to stay up to date with the science. And then the product itself, right? We use a great movement analysis technology to be able to understand, where's your mobility at, where's your posture at, how well your muscles activating, and how does that play into the stretch to help us progress. We have a great digital product via Go, StretchLab Go, that helps us influence the results they're getting outside of the studio by helping them continue to see results in the studio. And really a lot in between, but that's kind of the bigger meat of it.
Yeah, I want to dive into, like, you talked about, like, training 100 new flexologists on any given time frame or the process. And something that last year we came out with here at Fit Body Bootcamp is an onboarding process for all new coaches brand wide, just to make sure it's consistent. Incorporating educational based mindset, filming, review, feedback. I mean, that's just huge, and it's been a game changer for our coaches across the way. And it's just made our sessions, our coaches, I guess first and foremost, but our sessions just that more impactful. So from your perspective, would love to kind of find out a little bit more. You kind of highlighted it, but what does that training program look like when you're executing these trainings?
For sure. So generally they're going to get hired. They go through a pretty extensive training process. We have like a 90-day onboarding process that we coach to our franchisees and kind of put through, where there's multiple screenings, interviews. Because I'm a big believer that it starts with the right people. Right. If you just hire anyone, like, you're not going to see those results. I always joke with, like, the training program itself teaches people how to be great providers of the product, right? It doesn't necessarily teach them to have great behaviors or be great leaders. Those are things we can teach on the back end, but we also want to kind of really look for on the front end, right? That makes a big difference. So we really tailor questions and interviewing towards that to get their mindset. And then from there, they're going to go through kind of some in-studio training that they go through, a series of...
At their location?
Correct, a series of about 4 or 5 days of in-studio preparation. We have an LMS tool that's fantastic that allows them to kind of learn virtually. And so they go through a series of modules, roughly about 20 hours. And that's to get a lot of the theory component, right? We don't have to get the practical application yet. Once they finish all that up, which can take anywhere from a week or two, then they're going to come to one of our workshops, and we hold anywhere from 18 to 19 workshops across the country a month.
A month?
Correct.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so with that, that's led by one of our master instructors. And there's a set criterion of content that they have to go through. It's a lot of applying that information, right? Because they're putting hands on bodies, right? There's the public safety component, there's the quality control component, there's the utilizing the tools and everything, right?
And interject here, but it is definitely a more intimate model than our model. I mean, certainly like in the coaching and fitness, like, you're there, you're with your client, but obviously from your modality, it's even that much more intimate. So I would imagine you need to cover quite a few things to make sure that you're executing the flexology, but also doing it in a very comfortable way for the client.
Absolutely. And I mean, to that point, I will tell you that to be unbiased, we have a great stretch. We offer a great stretch, right? It's a great product, but I'm a big believer that people come for the stretch, but they stay for the experience, right? They stay members for the experience, and a big part of that experience is the soft skills. It's the personal skills. It's the buy-in that instructor gives to that person. That's what keeps someone long term, right? And so that's a huge piece we have to coach to throughout that process that we put in the LMS, through the onboarding, and then even at the workshop. And the workshop's like 2 days, 17 hours. They have an extensive test out at the end where they get graded and they have to pass. And then they go into their studio. And then what we generally have in our studios are what are called lead flexologists. They're like lead instructors. And they really help on the back end with continued coaching, continued support. And I help support them as well, in addition to the master instructors.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
There's so much synergy here. It's funny because you mentioned they come for the stretch, but they stay for the experience. Like what we teach at Fit Body Bootcamp is they come for the results, which are typically fitness and fat loss, but they stay for the relationships, the culture, and the experience.
Absolutely.
So, different modalities, obviously very, very synergetically intertwined, and also, some of the same philosophy.
I love it.
Which is incredible.
I love it.
Well, good. Well, now I want to transition, Austin, a little bit to more of the business side, and we're both like in franchise systems. So, can you talk a little bit about franchising in general? Because most of our audience are interested specifically in the fitness realm, but also business, entrepreneurship, and franchising. Can you talk a little bit about your experience within not necessarily StretchLab, but yes, within StretchLab, but more just as a franchise system?
Absolutely. I will tell you that franchising is very unique. I never worked in franchising before, and even just understanding franchising, right, is extremely unique. And then I would say that exponential, even beyond that, is unique in a positive way, where there's a tremendous amount of support, right? So we have it all the way from a president for each brand. We have a chief marketing officer and a marketing team that's with digital, and creative design and marketing. We have a VP of sales, and he has his own regional managers that support. We have myself in education, and then I also have a full team of instructors and an education coordinator. But then even beyond that, we have extensive resources when it comes to real estate and finding that, and actually having a specific real estate person that'll help you in your market.
Totally.
Go through the lease and everything. Development, someone who's very experienced in construction and design and building out your space and helping you through that process. And so it's that's kind of our biggest motto. That's our biggest foot forward, is that we're going to over communicate. We're going to over provide value when it comes to support. Because you've been in franchising, like your franchisee's success is your success, right? So it's really important that we involve that process and really not share any people, right? We want to make sure that each brand, because Exponential in itself has 9 brands, has their own people to support them through that, versus trying to kind of strain people across all 9 brands.
Yeah. So a little bit interesting or difference between your model has, kind of a parent company, ours is independent, so that's good visibility. Breaking it down from StretchLab specifically, you kind of cued a thought in mind. What's the structure? Like, you have an owner, a general manager, flexologist, like what's the company business structure for each location? Yeah,
so they're gonna have a franchise owner, right? They might have 1 or 2 or 3, they might have partnered up, right? Yeah. And within that, they're gonna have a general manager, or a sales manager, and there's also going to be a lead instructor, a lead flexologist. That would make up what we call kind of studio leadership, or the leadership team, that's involved most in the decisions. They communicate most directly with corporate, and they're involved in a lot of our meeting rhythms. We have weekly meeting rhythms, meeting phone calls with the studios, monthly webinars, coaching, all that stuff to really just over communicate information and provide support. So that's kind of the leadership team there. And then within that, you're generally going to have, depending on the number of members or where you're at in your growth cycle, you could have anywhere from 6 to 10 flexologists, right? To be able to support anywhere from 150 to 200 plus members. And then you're generally going to have maybe 1 or 2 front desk sales associates to help support you through the sales position. But that's essentially the makeup that you would see inside your studio.
Beautiful. Back going to the franchising perspective, what kind of background do you typically see a franchise owner in your system coming in with? And I'll share ours as, our kind of client avatar. We call him David, and he's in his mid 40s. He's had some success in his other career.
Yeah.
Fitness wasn't a huge passion of his, but probably towards his late 30s, early 40s, he realized, holy smokes, I need to get my stuff together. I need to, be in better shape, have more confidence, need to be able to, have energy to play with my kids. Goes through a fitness transformation, realizes, oh wow, I can actually, offer this to my community, and that's, a typical owner background story from our ownership. From your perspective, what type of owners are attracted to your brand? Yeah,
great question. I would say, they're all passionate. They're all passionate to start with, right? They're passionate to help people. They're passionate about wellness, right? We always say, you don't have to be passionate about or even knowledgeable, right? You don't need to be me or some extensive expert in stretching, right?
It has bachelors, masters.
Exactly. We're going to help you with that process. That's what we're to support. But you have to be passionate about health, wellness, and fitness, right? And you have to be passionate about helping people and seeing those relationships. And you have to be a leader, right? You have to have been a leader because you're going to have an organization that you're going to build. In just one studio, you could have anywhere from 10 to 12 people. If you're going to be multi-territorial, that's going to be 20, 30, 40 people that you're going to be a leader to and help support and grow. So you have to have kind of those passions in a sense and just want to kind of build into that. I would say most of them didn't start off as entrepreneurs, right? They all started off in your traditional finance, accountant, maybe they were in marketing or business, but then they found that they wanted to write their own story. That's what you'll hear a lot of them say, right? They want to write their own story in their book. They don't want to necessarily follow someone else's agenda, right? They want to build their future. And whether that's to help their family, whether that's to pursue a passion. But they're all fantastic stories, and I'd say that's kind of our avatar that you'd see there. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I want to kind of dive in a little bit deeper on the leadership component. Yeah. Because Austin, when I first joined his Fit Body Bootcamp as an owner back in 2012, I was passionate about fitness, I had success there, I had success in the sales industry, but I didn't have, a lot of leadership experience. I did to an extent, but I guess I didn't fully realize the skill set that I would need to acquire over the last, going on 10 years. And now part of our extensive programs with our elite trainings and our onboarding from coaches and owners, et cetera, a lot of it is leadership and management based. Now we like to attract owners that have that base, but we also know that leadership is a skill. It's a talent that can be learned with time. So a lot of our resources as of late has been really focused on making our owners better leaderships and providing that training. So you hit that one point that I wanted to kind of just get your perspective on. What type of training do you offer, not only from the Flexology perspective, but also from a business and leadership perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, every franchise owner is going to go through, once they're selected, right? And we go through a pretty extensive selection process to make sure it's the right fit. They go through franchise training, and that's a 3-day period where they'll come through, and each of the different departments will hit on different areas. A lot of that is focused on leadership and business model management, which is super important. And then, we have the same thing for our general managers as well. It's a 3-day process. They all have to come through it. Pre-COVID, it was coming into the studio. Right now, we've kind of switched to a virtual option, but it's still been very extensive for us, and it's been very helpful. And then beyond that, we have different rhythms that we'll hit. We have different phone call rhythms that we'll have, or different webinar rhythms that we'll do on a monthly basis to speak to leadership, to speak to management, to speak to different strategies, whether that's sales, marketing, or education, to really make sure that we're just over-communicating and providing that value. And then additionally, we'll provide newsletters, right? So it's all about just different mediums of communication. We provide a great monthly newsletter to all of our instructors, focused on leadership and different topics within the area. We do the same thing weekly for our franchise owners to make sure, because they're really the captains of the ship, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so we really have to make sure that they're bought into leadership, they're bought into the process. And so those are just some of the things that we look at and that we implement.
Huge.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to put a bow on the kind of franchise business development, and I want, from your perspective, what do you see the big value in franchising as an industry in general? And then also playing the devil's advocate, what will you see the biggest challenges in franchising from your perspective?
Yeah, I think the value is, scalability, right? And even, if I'm a franchise owner, I don't have to be an expert in everything. I don't have to be a sales expert. I don't have to be a marketing expert. I don't have to be an education expert. Do I need to know about those things? Absolutely, right? But that's the beauty of franchising, is the support you're going to get from people that are experts or educated in that. And so for you, it's an opportunity to invest, to build your purpose, to build your passion, to continue through that. But in a sense, it's like a plug and play model, right? I think to retract really quick, in the world that we live in with Instagram and TikTok, people make it seem too easy to be an entrepreneur.
Totally.
Right? Like everyone's like, oh, all I got to do is, do this, and it's super easy, and I got a Rolex and I made $1 million. It's like, dude, no you didn't, right? Like it is challenging but rewarding to be an entrepreneur and be in this business. But that is the opportunity, is you don't have to go alone, right? Like a big phrase I always love and we always talk about is like, if you want to go quick, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go together, right? And that's the value of taking information from people that have learned trials and tribulations, taking information so you don't have to make those mistakes yourselves, right? Because it can be expensive, especially, right?
It is.
Capital is what you need.
Ooh. Our tagline is, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, similar way to kind of look at the same kind of solution.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the devil's advocate, I think when you look at what your goals are, right? Especially as you open up more studios, the opportunity is always quality control, right? And continuing to make sure that the product that's being delivered is representative of what the brand is, right? And what the business is, and those are your challenges. But as long I'm a big believer. One of my big mentors is our president, and he always loves talking about systems, and I would echo that. If you have a systems-driven process, then it makes it much easier.
Yeah, amen to that.
Yeah.
All right, Austin, this has been incredible. We still have a few more minutes of your time, and I want to transition to the lightning round if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Give you the opportunity to kind of impart your last knowledge bombs with our audience. And the first question for you, and you have a lot of experience in this industry, but what would you say from your perspective is your zone of genius?
My zone of genius. In a quick way, I would say that it's going to it sounds crazy to a lot of people, but I have like an insatiable desire to grow and to be better. And I say that with true conviction, to the point where jokingly it borderlines an illness, where, if I'm not doing something, if I'm not growing, if I'm not thinking about the next step, there's just like an internal person just nagging at me, right? And I remember thinking, a few years ago, just people around me, they're like, this guy's got to be crazy, right? But and it looks weird to people that aren't bought into that process, right? But I would say that's it. I always have to be growing. I always have to be doing something. And I would say that's my zone, is what can I continually do better? How can I make myself better for myself, my family, and the people around me, to make an impact for them.
Love it, man.
Yeah.
Kindred spirits over here. I feel the same way. And also, it's like some people think I'm crazy, but I can relate in many levels.
Yeah.
All right, next up, what would you say is your biggest passion these days, and why?
I would continue on that theme, and it's just continued learning. I think, we talked about this offline, and I didn't get to talk about it as much, but I think even going back to the world of TikTok and Instagram, it's easy to look at where we're at, and people might say like, oh, they're just born for this stuff, right? And, that's what it is, right? And I was one of those people, right? When I look at successful people, I'm like, not for me, not in the cards. And so I would say like my biggest passion is like breaking invisible rules, like breaking conformity. Like there's a whole process we can get into. We don't have enough time of like how my life got into, but I was just in this place of like a fixed mindset, right? And I would say now I'm definitely more in a growth mindset, but trying to break these barriers, trying to set, I think as you grow, right, you look at education as a whole. We talked about this offline first. People think that college is education, and college is really just to go there to get a skill, and that skill provides you a job, and it doesn't make you great at that job. It just makes you minimally qualified.
Like baseline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But obviously, colleges are going to spend a lot of marketing and advertising to convince you that that's all you need, right? So you pay that $100,000 in tuition. But continued learning is what makes you great at life, right? And so reading, continually learning, having mastermind groups, meeting with mentors, that's a huge passion for mine. And what that allowed me for was to realize like I could be so much more than what I am, right? Whether that is, people in your past life trying to tell you that you can't be those things on purpose because, they might have some sort of insecurities, whatever that may be, but even innocuously, right? Sometimes there's just conversations or barriers that are put there. And it's like, no, like that doesn't really exist, and I can actually do that. And I think you would agree, like the more levels you reach, the more evolutions you reach. Like it just becomes addicting.
Totally.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree with you more on that point.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff. Next up I have for you, specifically in your business endeavors, you become a great coach. You're coaching, your franchisees, your master coaches and trainers. So you're in the business of giving great advice. Austin, what would you say is one of the best pieces of advice that you've been ever given, and why?
I would have to say, like, it's one of my favorite quotes. One of my favorite quotes is, you can have anything you want in life if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. And, many people take that differently, but I think the most basic form you can think of that is be of service, right? In whatever you do, be of service, give it 100%, show up, and get that compound effect, right?
Totally.
Being of service is great, but if you're of service once a week, that's kind of useless, and there's going to see no translatable results.
It has to be consistent.
Exactly. And so being of service is huge. It's kind of like that analogy of the person that's asking for fire but isn't putting the wood in for fuel and still expects the fire, right? They just expect their dream job or whatever that may be or their ideals to be there, right? And it's like, no, there's a long runway, and all you got to do is just be of service, see how it can provide value to someone else.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Next up, and this is an interesting question because you're so credentialed, you're so educated between your bachelors and masters. What would you say is a great book recommendation, or just a piece of learning content that you can share with our audience that really better their life, whether it be business perspective, fitness perspective, or just in general?
It's hard. It's a lot of great books. One of my, I would say a good. My first thought is, I love to be specific. So like, depending on what you look at, there's probably a good book for that. But if we keep it general, I think one of the most generally applicable, fantastic, impactful books is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, right?
Amen.
Yeah.
In fact,
I mean, that's just going to go through so many different, like, if you're like finance, I'm like, oh, here's this book, or leadership, extreme ownership, right? But that, like, How to Win Friends and Influence People, good foundation book.
Totally, and actually to tee off our audience, this is so funny, like great minds think alike. When our training protocol for our new coaches coming through the system, and actually when Emily joined forces, I don't think we actually introduced this curriculum. Emily is your wife, how we met. She was a coach with my location for a little bit. But we inserted the first piece of learning curriculum is this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, because it's just the foundation of our business being the relationship business first and foremost that will just benefit your life in so many ways. So just to validate your point there.
Yeah.
So if you haven't read that, it's a must.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. I have 2 questions left. Next question is your habits, and I'm the firm belief like success is actually just a ritual of habits. So for me, one of the biggest impactful habits that I've acquired is actually working out and getting into fitness. And one habit that I'm acquiring right now is to become more flexible. So it's starting with once a week, but now I have my calf stretches, this, that, and the other, which is topic for another day. But Austin, for you, what would you say has been a habit that you've acquired over the years that's really served you well?
Yeah, I would say continue the theme of great minds think alike. Big habit guy. The biggest one that's been helpful for me, it's not necessarily, it's an umbrella and it's a series of habits I do, but it's called Winning the Day, right? And 2 habit books I love, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg and High Performance Habits by Brendon Burchard. And what I do is I wake up, not super early, right? I'm not a Mark Wahlberg 3 a.m. guy. Wake up at like 5:30 to 6. And I focus on myself, right? Because I'm a big believer that like most people, they wake up their day, it's an alarm clock, and you just start with your day.
Yep.
You got to prepare yourself for the day to win the day. So I wake up, I start my cup of coffee. While I'm doing that, I'm on the floor, I'm stretching. I'm doing like maybe 10 minutes of stretches just to get myself doing like some light meditation while I'm breathing. Coffee's ready, go get the coffee, come back. And then what I do there is I listen to a YouTube video. It's 30 minutes and 31 seconds. It's called The Strangest Secret in the World. It's by Earl Nightingale. Strongly recommend you check it out.
Okay.
Do this every morning just to get the repetition.
Same video.
Same video. It sounds crazy, but the repetition is super important.
Yeah.
And I finish that up, and then I have a notebook where I have affirmations that I've written, and they're personal to myself. And I read those affirmations out loud of what I want. It's my purpose, my passion, and then like my chief definite aim. And I read that out. And then from there, I basically lead into my day, right? It might lead into a workout. It might lead into like actually starting my day, but it has been a life changer for me.
That just sets up the foundation.
It just sets you up so much for everything, right? To be depending on what your purpose is, right? To be a better person, to be more present, to be more flexible, to be more fit, to be more of service. It's just helped me tremendously.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right, Austin, this has been incredible. I want to thank you for imparting so much wisdom, but I have one last question, which is really just your parting piece of wisdom, knowing that our audience is interested in fitness, business, entrepreneurship, personal self-development. What would be your last parting piece of wisdom that would really help our audience?
Yeah, I would say just start. I think when you look at fitness or wellness, whether you are someone who's looking to become more fit, or whether you're a fitness instructor looking to start your own business, right? Or to become an instructor at FitBody, whatever that is. Sometimes the challenge is just starting, right? You take our fitness journey. A lot of people get deterred in that pre-contemplation phase of like, oh, well, if I start, I'm gonna have to go every day and I might get sore. And it's like, no, just start, right?
Just go.
Just do it, right? And that becomes huge. And from there, to your point, the habits will take over, right? The compound effect will take over. So I'd say, whatever you're doing, don't get caught up in thinking you have to have all these qualifications or all these prerequisites. A phrase I always love is that a somebody today always started as a nobody, right? So they all start somewhere.
I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. This has been awesome. For audience who wants to connect you, whether it's your personal handles or maybe you're just StretchLab's website, where can they learn more information about you?
Yeah, so for StretchLab, absolutely check out stretchlab.com. We have great, fantastic resources there. From a personal perspective, you can connect with my Facebook. It's just Austin Martinez. And then additionally, my Instagram handle is just Martinez.Austin18.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right, my friend, before we shoot today, I just want to thank you so much for being on the show. I've been excited at this, as we didn't really storytell too much, but this is our first time meeting actually today.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
your wife Emily coached for our facility for about 6 months
Yeah.
in between.
She loved it.
Her work at Disney,
Yeah.
and she said amazing things about you. And I've just unpeeled the onion, talked to many of your coaches at StretchLab, and they've just said phenomenal things. So I knew I had to get you on because great mind thinks alike. There's so much synergy here between franchising, between business, between recovery and personal and fitness and whatnot. So it's been really, really impactful to kind of tap into your brain. I'm so grateful. I know our audience got a ton of value, and I want to thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for thinking about me for this, and I've loved the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, friends, I know you got a ton of value today. I certainly did as well. And now, as always, go ahead and like and subscribe on YouTube and write an awesome review on iTunes, and that way we can keep producing this awesome content for free. That's all for today. Thanks so much.